Hello everybody, it's a Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the map Excavation Site for a bit of a Tomb King Civil War. So, on my end of the field, we do have the mighty Ark in the Black. With a composition that I really wanted to try out through Shopti with great bows, so I decided that no matter what, I would make him work. I would put him in a matchup, even if it was against Tomb Kings, and I would try to make some magic happen and perhaps get a win. So I did bring, as mentioned before, Ark in the Black. Ark in the Black, I think, is actually one of the strongest lords for the Tomb Kings currently. Despite the fact that Queen Khalida seems to be the go-to for most players, it is my opinion that with the fact that you get Lore of Death, stacked on okay melee stats, decent armor, some decent mobility on the horse, I do think makes Ark in the Black a pretty decent choice. He does get the Libra Mortis, which is a great little AoE, 44% physical resist, which is great against Tomb Kings because they don't have much magic damage. The Staff of Nagash, which improves power reserves, or power recharge rate, and minus 30 ability recharge, which is great for spamming spells, especially when you're trying to get out a lot of Fate of Buna and Spirit Leech. He does have the Tomb Blade of Arkan, which is an AoE, heal as well as resurrect, sort of like a mini Invocation of the Heck. That also imbues fire damage for Arkan. Of course, Fate of Buna and Spirit Leech just for that damage, and of course Tomb Kings because they don't have Invocation of the Heck or any healing. These two are very, very powerful spells. I also do have the Curse, which is of course just a built-in trait that when he drops below 50%, it causes damage in AoE. And then my Will Be Done, which is plus 5 melee defense, plus 5 melee attack for all nearby units, but this does not affect Arkan himself. Alongside him, I do have the Necrotect, which is my hero. I do believe the Necrotect is a pretty solid choice in almost any matchup, unless you're really not bringing any. Sort of like the Branch Wraith, I think it's generally a pretty good choice. I did bring the Vambrace of the Sun for that minus 9 melee attack debuff. The flame resistance is not too important, but I definitely think the minus 9 melee attack is a huge debuff and very, very useful. I also do have Restore just to heal up my any of my monsters or any of my constructs, because of course I'm fielding several, and that definitely could be useful. I didn't bring any melee buffs because I do not have any melee constructs. Now for my front line, it is composed entirely of skeleton warriors, trashy chaff infantry, but against the Tomb Kings who don't have the best melee attack or offensive infantry to begin with, these guys can definitely hold out for a good amount of time, and that's all that matters. Behind that we do have the Kepra Guard, which are the Regiment of Renowned Tomb Guard that have magic as well damage as well as regeneration. I'm really hoping that these guys will be able to tear their way through any cheaper chaff infantry that my opponent might put on the field. Beyond that we do have a unit of skeleton archers as well as the Blessed Region of Facht. This Blessed Legion does less damage. I do believe it is. We can look at the stats here. They do 10 and 1 with 7.2 reload. So they actually don't have they have the same damage per shot, but they actually don't get an improvement for the veterancy to their rate of fire. But they do have 160 range, and they do have armor sundering, which could be very useful against some of the higher end units that the Tomb Kings put on the field. Behind that, we do have the Shopti with great bows, just to pick away at large targets and high value sort of targets, and also to tear through infantry if they decide to come too close. And on the other end, we do have the Chosen of the Gods, which are the Regiment of Renowned Shopti, who do have a shield debuff as well as having a scatter shot that kind of fragments before hitting the target and then splashes out, as you will see shortly, because I will be engaging almost immediately on the enemy archers. In the back line, we do have Tomb Guard with halberds. These are one of my favorite infantry, I think, or definitely my favorite infantry on the Tomb King roster. I think they're very, very powerful. Their melee attack's not the greatest, and neither is their armor, but they do have silver shields, great melee defense at 47. That's actually really good for halberd infantry, even not just Tomb Kings, but by Tomb King standards, but really for any halberd infantry in the game. This is a very solid number. And then their weapon strength's not bad. 19 bonus versus large, 20 armor piercing, so definitely no pushovers, especially when dealing with monsters infantry that Tomb Kings can put on the field. On the flanks, to deal with any enemy large, I do have 2 units of sepulchral stalkers. These guys don't have a good charge bonus, but they have a very solid melee stats again when it comes to dealing with large. As you can see, they do have a pretty good bonus of 21 against large. Stacks have a high weapon strength of 78, armor piercing, and of course they do have that ranged attack that also applies poison and magic damage. And plus their armor's okay at 80, so definitely these guys aren't pushovers, and they can definitely lay the smack down on some large targets. My opponent decided to go in a somewhat different direction. For his lord, he did bring Queen Khalida, who I'm struggling to find here. You can see her mounted on her serpent, or her stalker, I suppose, or sepulchral stalker. That's what it looks like at any rate. And she, of course, has some very good stats. She's got much better melee stats than Arkan. She does have Venom Wave, which is a explosion that she can cast around herself. does a bit of damage and knockback and applies poison. She does her Tomb Strike, which is a self buff. She does have My Will Be Done, just like Arkan. And then Blessing of Asaph, which buffs nearby archers, which I think is perhaps not the most useful for Khalida, because simply put, you're almost never going to have Khalida in the backline. When you've got her mounted on a snake like this, she's going to be diving into the enemy backline, trying to be disruptive. You're probably not going to get much use out of this, so I think that's definitely a bit of an interesting choice for my opponent. My opponent also does have a Lich Priest of Nehekara, and here you can see the first frag shots are coming in and peppering my opponent's troops. You can see they're doing quite a bit of damage to these Nehekaran warriors, smushing these spearmen and all that sort of stuff. So going back to the topic though at hand, the Lich Priest of Nehekara, coming with a good selection of spells. He does have Nehru's Incantation of Protection, which is 4% damage resist, debuffs with Usep's Incantation of Desiccation, Curse of Zara, minus 60 armor, which is huge against some of the if I brought more construct heavy army, and then of course the Skull Storm, which is an AoE, which is a vortex. So definitely very powerful. This guy also does have, I do believe, he should have an ability, or actually that is the Curse of Zara. That is his ability that procs once he's below 50% HP, so very potent. My opponent also did bring a Tomb Prince, which interestingly enough brought him on a chariot with that bonus against infantry. Of course he does also have Tomb Strike. He has the Curse of Jaff, which once he drops below 50% induces Rampage and AoE, so once again very, very powerful. For his front line, my opponent is going cheap, much like me, fielding a bunch of skeleton spears, most likely to counteract an large, as well as a unit of Nehekaran warriors, so definitely kind of emulating what I'm doing with a single unit to deal with infantry, backed up by just cannon fodder. But you can see the Grape Shot already going in. I guess not Grape Shot, but the scatter arrows or shattering arrows plunging through and just cutting through these Nehekaran warriors. I was actually aiming for the Blessed Legion of Fakht, but they were getting intercepted. The arrows were getting intercepted, and that was not quite working out. In the meantime, my other unit of Great Bows will shortly be engaging on the enemy Ushabti with Great Bows themselves. Here in the backline, you can see, you can also see my opponent does have the Skeleton Archers as well as the Blessed Legion of Fakht, definitely very similar to me with that armor sundering and just trying to get decent damage output out. Then a unit of Ushabti Great Bows. These are the vanilla variant, so no fancy schmancy scatter shots, but they can definitely lay down the hurt once they get into range. They can definitely counteract my Ushabti, at least to an extent. In the backline, my opponent finally does have the Sphinx of Usek. A lot of these names are just crazy, and I'm definitely probably pronouncing some of them wrong. But the Sphinx of Usek, of course, does have poison, or does have fire and magical damage, and of course a huge bonus against large, massive HP at 7,300, and then armor piercing and anti-large. Out on the flank, my opponent also does have a unit that he's hidden away, a Tomb Scorpion, waiting to strike, bonus against infantry, armor piercing, high armor at 100, definitely a very brutal foe to deal with, so definitely could cause me some potential trouble. You can see here, I'm trying to snipe away at Queen Khalida a little bit. Even as the arrows are kind of plunging in, you can see I'm just trying to apply some pressure with my Ushabti Great Bows on the enemy Ushabti Great Bows. My opponent doesn't have a Necrotech, so he can't repair damage. That's definitely good for me. In the meantime, you can see my opponent is starting to cast a Vortex spell here, so I'm going to be forced to move out of the way. Unfortunately, I'm a little slow on the uptake, and the Kepler Guard does take a few losses. And of course, I can't quite pull them out of the way, and they are kind of just getting run over by this windstorm. In the meantime, the Blessed Legion of Fakht, as well as the Skeleton Archers, are just laying a smackdown on my opponent's troops. You can see these Nehekaran warriors are getting annihilated. In the back, the Blessed Legion is falling apart. And here in the front line, you can see I do dive in with Sepulchral Stalkers aiming to tie down the Queen Khalida. In the meantime, the Chosen of the Gods here just trying to apply some pressure, but unfortunately my opponent's Tomb Prince does plow through, going into my Blessed Legion, and then tying down the Chosen of the Gods. Fortunately, though, I do have the Kepler Guard on point, and these guys will be able to kind of buy me a little bit of time. And you can see I also do have the Tomb Guard, so I'm definitely going to be able to stall over here. The Sepulchral Stalkers dealing with Khalida. They're not going to be able to beat her. And she does actually have a heal going off right now due to one of the spells that was casted, but she herself doesn't have very much sustain outside of that, and she's definitely going to kind of get annihilated. You can see I do drop 44% damage resist here. Out on the flank, you can see the Sphinx of Usef is in the back, causing some immense damage. I'm plunging in with the Necrotech, just trying to tie it down and buy my Ushabti some time, as well as the Skeleton Archer some time. I completely forget about my Sepulchral Stalkers, guys, and that is going to make me suffer a huge amount here, as I should have committed him here to tie down the Sphinx, and that would have been a huge boon for me. Over on the flank, you can see Queen Khalida is in the fray. The Scorpion has also been committed. You can see Arkan here trying to help. The Chosen of the Gods will do okay in melee. They don't have great stats, but definitely passable, especially with the AoE buffs. And over here you can see the Tomb Prince is being dragged into the muck. He's down to less than 50% HP. The Halberds are on top of him. With a chariot, he doesn't have great melee defense, and he's just dying horribly. Here in the front lines, you can see things are definitely going in my favor. The Skeleton Warriors will beat the Skeleton Spears in a 1-to-1, I do believe, and the Ushabti Great Bows are slowly but surely whittling away at the Sphinx of Usef. Here in the backline, my poor Blessed Legion of Fakht is being messed up really, really badly, but I'm able to kind of get clear and I'm trying to keep Ark in the Black alive as much as I can. Over here, unfortunately, the Sepulchral Stalkers are basically wiped out, and they will so shortly fall apart. I still haven't realized that these Sepulchral Stalkers are sitting in the woods, being completely forgotten, because I was so focused on the micro, just trying to get units clear of the Sphinx and deal with it, and it was really not working out. I completely forgot about that, and it was a huge mistake for me. My opponent is casting another Vortex here, which I think is a bit of a mistake once again, because there's only really one unit here that's going to suffer for this. Perhaps the Halberds will suffer a little bit, but honestly, he's not going to wander all over the place. I do cast the Tomb Blade of Archon as well, which is going to be healing and replenishing these troops. And now you can see, finally, we have maxed out the Realm of Souls tier 3, and I will be able to summon some troops. This flank, which is just collapsed, will now get reinforced with these Ushabti. Over here you can see the Skeleton Archers as well as the Ushabti Great Bows are still firing away, just whittling away at the Sphinx. The Halberds, you can see, are still dishing out a lot of hurt. You can see they're actually halfway up to the Chevron. They're just doing a lot of damage to these units and definitely dragging them down to the muck. I finally realized I have Sepulchral Stalkers camping out in the woods, and I do start pulling them out. And you can see that 44% damage is going down as I try to save Ark in the Black from annihilation. The Chosen of the Gods have actually been holding pretty well. They have 45 melee defense, so they're not pushovers, especially against units that aren't specialized against large. And you can see that the Sphinx of Usef here is actually being dragged into the muck. It's definitely not having the greatest time of it. I'm also able to kind of focus down my opponent's troops with the help of Archon's Spirit Leeches, and you can see I'm hitting the Queen Khalida with him there, just taking away their HP. My opponent does get his Ushabti here, but it's really too little too late. At this point, his Tomb Scorpion and Khalida are very much beat up, and they're not really going to be able to escape. The Sepulchral Stalkers are in the fray. Sepulchral Stalkers are basically a hard counter to units like Ushabti, and they will do a very good job here in the heart of things, especially when backed by these Tomb Guard with Halberds, who, as you can see, just hit another Chevron. Over here, my Skeleton Warriors are pushing through, trying to apply pressure to the Lake Priest as well as the Skeleton Warriors, as finally the rest of my opponent's front line really starts to crumble under the pressure of the Ushabti as well as the pressure of these sort of low-end skeleton troops. Over here, Archon is just kind of camping out, doing his own thing, not really fighting. I don't want to commit him to anything. I don't want him dying. Definitely not in the pits here against the Tomb Scorpion, all those units. And of course, my opponent still does have some pretty powerful AP units that could bring him down potentially. So I do try to chase down Queen Khalida here, a little bit of a greedy move, but she's pretty slow on her Scorpion. She only got, or on her Snake, she only has 66 movement speed. You can see some of the arrows there coming in from the Ushabti. I do finally try and make a charge with Archon. Archon misses, but he does land a hit on her. Causes a bit of damage, and he will be able to bring her down. And she's just at this point crumbling, and she's going to go down the next time Archon hits her. There, as you can see, she does go down. So with that, my opponent's army is dead. It's going to start crumbling immediately. You can see the Tomb Scorpion here going to end up falling next to the Sphinx. Of course, with the Sepulchral Stalkers still doing some decent hurt here. And of course, the Halberdiers being absolute champs, raking in almost 2 chevrons in the course of that battle. So we're going to throw things in the fast forward as the last kind of crumbling happens. And we do get a Pyrrhic victory against the Tomb Kings, as the Tomb Kings. So, my biggest mistake that game, by far, was not committing those Sepulchral Stalkers in a timely manner. Before that, the first unit of Sepulchral Stalkers did a great job just tying down High Queen Khalida, buying me the time I needed to... by dealing with Khalida that way, they bought me the time I needed to kind of defend my backline in a more efficient manner. Unfortunately, I forgot about the second unit of Sepulchral Stalkers, and that meant that for a while, the Sphinx of Usef was just running ham in the backline, running amok, doing whatever the heck it felt like, and I had nothing shutting it down, so that was a huge mistake. The Tomb Guard with Halberds did an absolute champion job. Almost got 2 chevrons, so really some great work. The Kepler Guard did actually pretty terrible. They got shut down pretty hard. I didn't really utilize them anywhere near to their full potential. I really should have tried to get them into the fray against the squishy low-end infantry. Instead, they ended up getting tied down fighting heroes on large mounts, which was just a disaster for them. You can also see my opponent's archers got really huge value because obviously they weren't being interfered with for much of the game, except for the early game when, of course, the Chosen of the Gods were sniping away at them and doing some immense work. The Sphinx of Usef, though, definitely a huge commitment resource-wise, and a lot of my opponent's large troops simply got bogged down and massacred in the pits fighting against the Tomb Guard, as well as getting Spirit Leeched by Archon. Especially with the backing of the Ushabti Great Bows, who here you can see gained veterancy. This was really just a rough fight for all these high-end units. And of course, this front line of troops, my opponent's front line was really just no match for my front line, and really wasn't a very good qualitative sort of support tool. Very much my opponent's damage dealing core was here, whereas I had a somewhat slightly wider or more diverse selection of units that could do damage. Of course, the Skeleton Warriors not so much, but definitely the Tomb Guard and the Kepler Guard were a little more competitive. Sepulchral Stalkers were both good, and I did have 2 Ushabti Great Bows, so that was definitely very useful. Nonetheless, great game to my opponent, Rathim here. Definitely was an intense game, in part no thanks to my mistakes, but also due to my opponent definitely getting the jump on me with the Tomb Scorpion and certain things like that. Definitely a great game. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below to keep up with additional content. As usual, guys, if you have any comments, criticism, anything like that, be sure to post those down in the comments. I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.